Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 4 townhomes being made available at Winsor at Millbrook Village in Duxbury. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit more background information on the homes, and also I'll be covering the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat through Zoom, or you can unmute yourself. When you came into the meeting, you were muted just to minimize any outside noise. But if you have a question, please do unmute yourself. I'll be asking throughout the presentation as well. And this is a live session. It's being recorded for anyone who wants to watch it after the fact that wasn't able to join in. So first, just some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we are an offsite affordable housing consulting group. So we've been hired by the developer to market these affordable homes. Conduct this information session will also be the agency that is collecting and reviewing lottery applications to determine an applicant's eligibility for the affordable housing program. And we'll also be the ones running the lottery eventually. So we're not part of the sales team. We haven't seen the homes in person, but in the initial phases of this process, we are your main point of contact rather than the sales team. Oh, can't hear audio. Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, because I'm not muted. I can turn up my mic a little bit. I just turned it up to the max there. But otherwise, Debbie, it might be on your end. So I'll just continue, but let me know. So like I said, we're not the sales team or anything, but you will be in touch with the sales team at a later date if you're one of the applicants after the lottery that is going to be moving forward in the process. So there's kind of multiple steps in the process. The first is to apply for the affordable housing program, which is submitting the lottery application. You'll be in touch with SEB Housing during that time. We can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program. We'll do a preliminary review of your application, but you're just self-reporting your income when you submit your lottery application. You don't need to submit pay stubs or anything like that just yet. And you'll be entered into the lottery assuming that our preliminary review of what you've self-reported qualifies you for the affordable housing program. The only piece of information that you need to submit with your lottery application is the mortgage pre-approval. So no pay stubs or anything, but that mortgage pre-approval is required. The second step in the process involves reserving and actually buying one of the homes. So your opportunity to do that will depend on your waiting list placement after the lottery. So if you haven't already done so, you could go to sebhousing.com. That's where you'll see a page specific to the Windsor. So if you click on housing opportunities and then click on I want to buy, there's going to be a page specific to the Windsor at Millbrook Village. And that has a downloadable version of the application, a sample deed rider, which I'll touch on, and an information packet. The information packet has a lot of the information that I'm going to be reviewing tonight. And if you choose to apply for one of the homes at the Windsor, you're going to need to complete that lottery application that you see there and attach that mortgage pre-approval. You can submit that in one of several ways. So most people have been scanning it over with attachments. You can also fax it, send it by regular mail to our office over in Needham. You can, there is a drop box there if you're ever in the Needham area, and you can drop it there. Whichever one of those options works best for you, we encourage you to get your application in early if you know you're interested in the opportunity. It is fairly brief. Like I said, you don't have to submit any supporting documentation other than that mortgage pre-approval. And applications are due on July 21st, along with the mortgage pre-approval, and they need to be either postmarked or delivered by that day to be able to qualify for the lottery. Okay, great, good, thanks. I'm glad you can hear now. So these homes are being sold at affordable prices. The calculation for what is considered affordable in the area is a function of the affordable housing program. And because they're going to be sold for amounts that are lower than the market rate units at the development, only households who qualify for the affordable housing program will be able to purchase them. So in order to qualify, your total household income has to be at or below 80% of the area median income. We'll talk about the numbers in just a few minutes. But just to give you a background on the properties, these are new homes. The sales prices are significantly lower than the market rate homes within the community. The affordable 2-bedroom homes are going to sell for $315,900. There is a $230 monthly condo fee. The 3-bedroom home, there's one of those, is going to sell for $342,600 with a $321 condo fee. The market rate homes at this development are selling for over $1 million. It's a very desirable area, and like I said, these are new homes. So the amounts, the sales prices, like I said, were a function of the affordable housing program, and they take the formula takes the area median income into consideration, and Duxbury falls in the Boston area median income, although it's a little further out from the city. And so since these are affordable homes, there's going to be what's called a deed rider filed with the deed at the time of the purchase. So this ensures that the homes remain affordable even in the future if the first owner decides to sell. So just a brief overview. Obviously, this is something that would be further down the line, but you want to make sure you're reading that deed rider at the time of closing so you understand the stipulations. I'm just going to highlight 3 of the main stipulations. The first being that the deed rider limits the amount for which you can eventually resell the property. So if you're looking to buy a home and turn it around and sell it within a year or 2, it wouldn't make sense for you. It doesn't mean you won't be able to sell the home for a potential profit. It would just need to be resold to a buyer who qualifies for the affordable housing program. So you might get some return on investment, but it's going to not be the same sort of appreciation that market rate homes might see within a couple of years. And there is a resale formula for the resale price. It's in the last page of the information packet, and that formula is also based on the area median income. The deed rider also says that the property has to be your primary residence, so it can't be rented out as an investment property like an Airbnb or a Vrbo. And then just the last thing I wanted to touch on from the deed rider, if you would like to refinance or make some improvements or anything to the home, Mass Housing would need to approve that. So although these are brand new homes, you might not be looking to make any improvements. You would just would need to know further down the line that that sort of thing would need to go to the state for approval. If you're interested in the opportunity, like I said, you have to have that mortgage pre-approval from the bank. So we suggest that if you're reviewing the information packet, you could just take page 8 with you, which has the mortgage standards, mortgage pre-approval standards, right to the bank that you're looking to get your pre-approval from, just so that the bank knows the stipulations of the affordable housing program. On your screen now, too, I just want to mention that there's just some information that's kind of already in the information packet, but just some community amenities and things that are unique to the Winsor at Millbrook Village. So there will be garage parking, surface parking, gives you a little more information about what the condo fee covers. There's central heat and AC, and there's some beaches, schools, shops close by to this opportunity. So in terms of I mentioned the mortgage product, the information packet that has the mortgage pre-approval. So if I go to page 8 here, this is what I'm talking about. You might want to take that to your lender if you haven't got your mortgage pre-approval yet, because this would be a useful page for them to see. And that's because you want to make sure that the mortgage product that they're offering you is going to meet the necessary standards of the affordable housing program. So you also would want to bring a copy of the deed rider with you, the sample deed rider, which is in our website listing. And that's because some of the information there can be problematic for some lenders. So certain loans aren't going to accept all the terms of the deed rider. For example, the loan for this program, this affordable housing program, needs to be a fixed interest rate throughout the term of the mortgage. It also can't be an FHA or a VA loan, since those types of loans don't accept the deed restriction that comes with this affordable housing program. So you want to be sure that you're not in a situation where you get pre-approved for a mortgage, and then when it comes time to actually go back and get your mortgage approval, you don't want to be denied because of the restrictions on the affordable housing from the affordable housing program. And also, we just like to mention to people that it has been difficult or just unsuccessful for anyone that we've worked with to close with a Bank of America or Chase Bank loan. So you might want to avoid those two as your lender. But again, you can choose any bank that you want. We just would strongly encourage you to choose someone who has experience with the affordable housing program. And this link here on page 8 of the information packet, MHP is an agency that has consolidated a lot of lenders in Massachusetts, and pretty much any bank that you can think of is represented on that link. So it's not limiting you to just a few people that know how to do affordable housing mortgages in there. So take a look at that if you're still looking for a lender, because there's lots of options there for people who are knowledgeable about the affordable housing programs. And so the mortgage pre-approval standards state that you must provide a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price. Half of that, so 1.5% of the purchase price, has to come from your own funds, unless you're receiving a grant or down payment from a nonprofit or other entity. So in total, your loan or mortgage is going to be up to 97% of the purchase price. So keep that in mind. I'm going to move on to eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program, but if you have any questions on either what was already covered or the application process, let me know. So there's 4 eligibility requirements, and these are listed in the information packet, but they're also on your screen right now. So everyone in the household has to qualify as a first-time home buyer, and there are exceptions to that, and I'll discuss those in a few minutes. But in general, households can't own a home at the time of their application, and applicants who qualify for one of the exceptions that I'll mention need to have sold their home prior to closing on the affordable home at Winsor. The second eligibility criteria, which I already touched on a little bit, is that household income and assets have to be below the maximum allowable income and assets for the program. So they're listed on your screen right now, and I'll go over those again in a few minutes. But if you're a one-person household, your total household income, gross household income, needs to be below or at or below $96,000. And then it goes up from there depending on how many members are in your household. The third eligibility criteria, and the asset limit as well. The asset limit is $75,000 per household. The third eligibility criteria is that households have to get that mortgage pre-approval. The fourth eligibility criteria doesn't come up all that often, but the condos are being made available by a developer, obviously. If you work for them or if you're related to them in some way, you may not be eligible for the lottery. To circle back to the first eligibility criteria, so this first-time home buyer, a family member is considered to be a first-time home buyer if they haven't owned a home within the last 3 years. That includes through joint ownership. So if a household member was on the deed to a home with a former partner or spouse within the last 3 years, they were still considered to have owned that home. There's 5 exceptions to that the program has. Those are in the information packet. I just want to highlight the 3 that come up most often. The first is someone that the regulations refer to as a displaced homemaker. So that's someone that is defined as someone who hasn't worked outside the home for years, but worked at home to care for the family and the home. They owned a home within the last 3 years with their partner or spouse, but they recently were divorced or legally separated, so they're no longer on that home's deed. If you have someone that qualifies as a first-time home buyer, sorry, as what the program refers to as a displaced homemaker, they could still qualify as a first-time home buyer if they've owned a home within the last 3 years, as long as the home is sold now. The second first-time home buyer exception is a single parent with at least joint custody of one or more children, or someone who's pregnant that's now being displaced due to a family breakup and they're now looking for a new home. And then the third most frequent exception is an age-qualified household. So that applies to someone who's over the age of 55 and that person is selling or has sold a home within the last 3 years in order to purchase an affordable property. So like I said, even if someone in your household qualifies for those exceptions, they will still had to have sold their home prior to buying one of the homes at the Windsor. So that might mean a divorce would need to be finalized, or just to make sure that your name is not still on the deed for the property. What does the asset limit mean? So the asset limit means that your total household assets, meaning funds that you have in, I'm going to talk about assets in a minute, but the total amount that you have in bank accounts, the after-tax amount of your 401k if you have one, amounts in bonds, stocks, that sort of thing, can't exceed $75,000 you wouldn't qualify for the affordable housing program. And I'll talk, like I said, more about assets in a minute. In terms of the income limits, since these are affordable homes, like I said, they're being made available only to households who qualify for the affordable housing program. These maximum income limits, just like the sales price, they are set for the program, and the maximum income limits are set by household size, as you can see. So that means you're going to want to make sure on your application that you're listing everyone who's going to be living in the home. These amounts are listed everywhere. They're on the application, they're on the information packet, so you'll have them. These are updated annually. They were just updated in May. For the Boston area, like I said, if you're a one-person household, the income limit is $96,000, and then it goes up from there depending on your household size. And although you don't need verification of your income at this early stage, I still want to give you a basic overview of how your income is going to be calculated. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. And that includes all income for the household members. So that includes, if you have bonuses or overtime. The only exceptions to it are minors. So if you have someone in your household who's under 18 and is working and earning a wage, we're not going to count their income towards your total household income. The other exception is dependent full-time students who are working. So maybe you have a 20-year-old in your household, a college student who's still your dependent, and we would only count the first $480 of their annual wages when determining eligibility. Other than that, it is the gross income, not your net income. So if you're working, it's the amount you make before taxes, although most of us are not taking home the full amount that's listed on our pay stub. And then how we calculate income isn't the same for everyone, or isn't one size fits all, I should say, because everyone's income circumstances are unique. There's going to be some people who are earning a weekly salary that's the exact same amount every week or biweekly, and that's consistent throughout the year. There are people who are self-employed or working seasonally, and in those circumstances, we're going to need to look further into the past to determine what the projected 12 months of income will be for that household. And then specifically, if anyone in your household is self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement, and your business expenses could be taken into account. But in general, any income that you have been making, we have to assume that you will continue to make it going forward unless we have definitive information that you are no longer working at a certain job, for example, and all of that. So when you're filling out your application, make sure you're filling out, wages, any other income like Social Security, benefits, pension benefits, that sort of thing, unemployment benefits. Make sure that all of that is listed out so we don't have any, it's just to minimize questions and the back and forth after the fact if you are one of the top households in the lottery who needs to submit verifying information later on in the process. In terms of minimum income, there's no minimum income requirement for a homeownership lottery on the affordable housing program, but you do have to qualify for a mortgage, so you're going to need to meet the bank's requirements in order to receive that mortgage pre-approval that you are going to need to submit with your application. And then to assets. So households can't have more than that $75,000 in assets at the time of application. So that would include funds that you might be using towards a future down payment. So for example, if you happen to have a family member who's generously, gifting you part of your down payment, that is considered an asset, and you would need to disclose that on your application. Assets could also include cash and savings or checking accounts, CDs, the net value of stocks or retirement accounts like a 401k, bonds, even your Venmo or PayPal account. You might think it's a little strange that we need to count money that you have tied up in a retirement account, especially since you may not be planning to use it for decades, but the program does require us to do so, since you could, in theory, access the account to withdraw funds, even though it would come with a penalty. So it's the post-penalty amount, or the net cash value, that we have to count towards your $75,000 maximum asset amount. So you'd be asked for, if you have a 401k or a 403b, you'd be asked to get a letter from the financial institution that holds that for you, listing the post-penalty amount. They'd be able to tell us, if you were to liquidate that account today, how much would you actually be taking home? In terms of interest, if any interest is being generated by your assets, that income could count towards your total household income. We don't need asset information about personal assets like jewelry or cars or anything like that. That about covers the eligibility criteria for the housing program and the lottery. So again, any questions on that, let me know. A lot of that information is in the, I should have turned this slide for you, but a lot of that is in the information packet. And I'm going to talk about lottery eligibility now as well. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in this opportunity, you should get your application in to get the process started. SCB Housing will review your application, contact you if there's any information that appears to be missing or incorrect, and you'll have a chance to resubmit it. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent a lottery application number, which will be in the form of a series of numbers. So if you're the very first person to be approved for this lottery, you will have the lottery application number of A.001. That's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds, like I said, with the order in which your application was approved. And so we can have an anonymous lottery when the time comes. So when you get that email from us with your lottery application number, if you're qualified for the lottery, it's also going to have, it's also going to confirm, if you indicated on your lottery application, if your household qualifies for local preference. So that would be applicable to households who either work, live, or send children to Duxbury Public Schools. So if you work or live full-time in Duxbury, you might qualify for the local preference. So you want to confirm that that email correctly identifies your household as local preference or not, because that's going to impact placement on the waiting list, or at least one of the waiting lists. So you want to be able to verify for us after the lottery if you indicated that you have local preference. And the lottery application deadline is July 21st, and the lottery itself will be held virtually, just similar to this Zoom call, on July 29th. And we'll create the waiting list shortly after the lottery, and top households on the waiting list will be invited by SCB Housing to move forward to reserve a unit, get the mortgage, and buy the home. So it'll be the same format, like I said, as this information session, a Zoom session. Depending on the number of applicants, we will either draw application numbers from a box, or we will do a computer-generated lottery where it sorts your lottery application numbers into a random order. and that's all screen shared. Every lottery number is going to be included in the lottery. It's going to be drawn or picked in this lottery. So sometimes you think, there's 3 units, there's 3 homes, we're only going to pick 3 numbers, but that's not the way that this type of a lottery works. Because what we're doing is we're holding the lottery so we can create an order for priority for the next steps in the process and to create those waiting lists. So if you're watching at the time of the lottery, you might not know what your placement is on the waiting lists until an hour or 2 later when I have sorted the results onto the waiting list based on the priorities that are in the application, that are in the information packet. So I'm going to show you that in just a second, but I see there's a question. Okay, so the question here is regarding the full-time home buyer exception. What if you're transferring a home to your children, but you meet the age, income, asset requirements otherwise? So if you're on the deed of a home right now, and that means you've owned the home either now or you've owned it within the last 3 years, I don't believe that that kind of a transfer would qualify. If you're over hold on, I'm just looking back here at because one of the exception is the age qualified household. So if you're over 55, and you're selling a home or transferring a home for a small amount of money potentially to children, possibly if you're over the age of 55. So potentially. So what I would say is email your question to info@scbhousing.com, and that way we have your email address and we'll be able to get back to you with more information on that. I'm going to check with my colleague on it just because the person who reviews the applications knows the ins and outs a little bit more than I do on the exceptions to that rule. But like I said, potentially if you're over the age of 55, I don't see why you wouldn't be qualified for that that exception. So info@scbhousing.com. I'll just message that in there again. I'm sure you heard it. That's the general email that kind of any questions can be sent to, and that's going to remind us to look more into that for you. Thanks for the question. All right. So I'm going to pull up the information packet real quick because it's a little bit helpful to show you what I mean by household size or household priority here. So when you fill out your lottery application, you're going to have a household type that you qualify for. So either type 1, 2, or 3. And when you get a lottery application number, it's also going to confirm what your household type is. If that doesn't seem right to you, if you have any questions on it, please reach out to us. But household types, generally, if you're a 1-person household, you're going to be a household, a type 1 household. And this page in the information packet here kind of gives you information about it. But basically, larger households, if you're a type 3 household, you're going to have top priority for the 3-bedroom homes. If you're a type 2 household, you're going to have second priority for the 3-bedroom home, and so on. The 2-bedroom condos have local preference attached to them as well. So if there's Duxbury residents that are applying for the lottery and they are type 3 households, they're going to have top priority, and it goes from there. I just wanted to show that to you so you can kind of visualize it a little bit while I'm talking about it. But when I'm sorting the results onto the waiting list, I'm going to be taking household type into consideration. So when I actually do the drawing, you don't know if the person pulled ahead of you is a type 3 household or a type 1 household. So that's why during the lottery itself, you're not really going to know whether or not you are the first person on the waiting list, because we have to sort the results by the priorities. So anyway, about an hour or 2 after the lottery is run, everybody who qualified for this lottery is going to get an email with the waiting list, the sorted waiting list, the finalized waiting list attached to it, and you'll know a lot more at that point as to whether or not you're going to be one of the households who will be invited forward to move forward in the process. And that next step in the process will be providing income, asset, tax documentation so we can confirm your eligibility for the affordable housing program. Because remember, just to apply for the lottery, you're just self-reporting what your income is. So you have about a week or so to get all that information into us. There's a lot of information that needs to come in. So SEB, we always make sure that we're working with you. If something is missing from your initial application, that's fine. We will work with you to get that completed. Once we receive your application, if you're one of those top households, we're going to review it, respond to you, and like I said, we may need to go back and forth a little bit to get additional documentation from you if we have questions on, bank deposits or pay stubs. There might be some questions that arise. So ultimately, if you're found eligible by SEB Housing after we do that secondary screening, your file will be sent to the monitoring agent. So there's an agent that has been assigned by Mass Housing to do a file review and give us the green light that you're eligible to move forward in the process. Once that agency has approved your application, the process becomes similar to steps you might take when you're purchasing a market rate home. Once you've been found eligible by SEB Housing and also by the monitoring agent, you might decide to hire an attorney to assist you with navigating through the home buying process. That's perfectly fine to do. It's obviously a huge decision to buy a home, but we would recommend that you don't do that before you've been approved by SEB and that secondary approval by the monitoring agent. So once the monitoring agent has approved your application, we'll put you in touch with the owner or the sales team, and you'll have time to schedule and tour the homes, complete the reservation agreement once you've reserved the home. And at the reservation, you need to put down a $500 refundable deposit at that time. After you reserve the home, you'll have about 10 business days to sign the purchase and sale agreement and place the required deposit down. So the deposit at the time of purchase and sale is 1.5% of the sales price minus that $500 that you've already paid at reservation. Your purchase and sale agreement is also going to include certain agreed upon contingencies like your closing date, and it is one of the final steps in the home buying process. So the finish line is near at that point. And once the P&S is signed, you'll then need to go back to the bank who issued your mortgage pre-approval and obtain your mortgage commitment. And the bank's process is going to vary a little bit depending on the lender, but generally they're going to want to review all of the documents that you have up until this point, like the purchase and sale agreement, the deed rider for the affordable program, and they'll do an appraisal of the home. After you have that mortgage commitment, so SEB Housing has to do another final review to confirm that your household is still eligible at closing for the affordable housing program. So about 3 to 4 weeks before your closing date, we're going to ask you for updated pay stubs, bank statements, your mortgage commitment letter. And once you've been approved, we'll forward your file along to the monitoring agent again. They do a final review to confirm that your eligibility has been maintained. Because again, you have to qualify for the affordable housing program, not just at your time of application, but at the time of closing. So that's the idea behind that. Once you've closed on the home, you can move in. There's not going to be future income or asset eligibility reviews. So if you get a raise, in 6 months from now or a year from now, or you get 2 jobs, that is fine. It doesn't disqualify you at all from owning the home. One question that I always seem to get is what the property tax will be on the home. So I have the Duxbury tax rate here. It's $9.96 per $1,000. So the annual taxes for these affordable homes are based off of the affordable price. And so the estimated taxes are right around $3,150 for the 2 bedrooms to about $3,400 based for the 3 bedroom. Just wanted to put that out there because we do get that question a lot. That about covers what I wanted to get through that's in the information packet, and just kind of the highlights of the application process and the the process just from here on out to closing. Again, you can find the lottery application on our website, sebhousing.com. If you go to I Want to Buy, you'll see it, the Winsor there, and the information packet and the sample deed rider are also on there, so you can read more about this opportunity. Any other questions? Oh, I think I do have one here. Good question. So is the waiting list only applicable for the Duxbury location or other SEB lotteries? So yes, if you apply for this lottery, it's only, your application is only applicable for the Duxbury lottery. Hopefully, if you're interested in more than one homeownership lottery, a lot of the information that you gather and submit for the Winsor is, it'll just be easy for you to transfer that over to a second application if you're interested in another one of the homeownership lotteries. Sure, any other questions? So the applications, like I said, are due July 21st, so a little bit more than a month left. Yep, of course, you can email any questions. I would suggest info@sebhousing.com. That's the quickest way. We will get back to you usually within 24 hours or less. We look forward to getting your questions or application. It's a great opportunity, and thanks for the interest. We'll be in touch. Have a good night.